In this video, I'll be sharing with you a requested tutorial from a subscriber on how to cut and sew this simple inbuilt corset dress. And this dress is from Rahim Olashil on TikTok. So for today's tutorial, we are going to go ahead to create a beginner version of this dress. So let's start by drafting out our pattern. Now, for the upper part, you need your shoulder to bust line, your shoulder to under bust, your shoulder to waistline. And for an inbuilt corset, you need to add 5 inches after your waistline. Go ahead and mark your shoulder divided by 2. Add ½ inch to this dress because it has a sleeve and come down by 1 inch. For the neckline, I will use 2.8 inches. I'm doing this because I'm cutting a turtle neckline and I don't want it to gape. So I'm using 2.5 here. Now, if using 2.8 might be tight for you, please go ahead and use 3 inches. From that shoulder slope, I'll connect to my neckline because the shoulder is not straight. I'll go ahead to find my armhole, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches, and I'll mark a straight line there. Now, I'll place back my tape and mark my shoulder divided by 2 plus half, and I'll connect it all the way up. To draw your armhole curve, place your tape, divide your armhole into 2 equal parts and mark ½ inch. Now, place your tape on your chest line, mark your bust round circumference divided by 4. Connect from that point to the ½ inch at the armhole and also extend to the upper part of your pattern. The next step we'll take from here is to mark our darts. Now measure your nipple to nipple, divide it by 2. Now I'm marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2 on this point. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches and I'll draw a straight line there. Now after I'm done marking on this point, I'll divide the remaining part of my shoulder. This will serve as a guide when I'm cutting out my cup area. Now I'll connect this back to the bust line this way. After I'm done marking on this point, I'll mark 1 inch here, 1 inch here. Now if you're plus size, you'll be using 1.5 inches on both sides of your pattern. Now after marking this, I'll go ahead and place my ruler and I'm going to go ahead to draw a straight line to connect all these lines that I marked earlier. After marking out, I'll place my curved rule, come down by 1 inch from the bust line this way, connect to the under bust. Repeat it at the other side. You don't want your cup to turn out too pointy, that's why I'm doing this. Now I'll go ahead and use my marker to outline. Now after I'm done outlining, I'm going to mark where I want my cup to start. I want it to start like 1.5 inches. If you're a bit busty, you can consider using 2.5 or you can use 2 inches. Now after marking, I'll connect it back to my pattern. Connect from that point to that 1 inch I have. Now before connecting, I'll just make like a mark coming up by ½ inch, which will serve as a guide, and I'll connect. Now I'll also go ahead to blend in my cup at this point. Now after blending out, I'll connect to the other side of my dart intake. Now after I'm done connecting, this is what I have. I'll go ahead to outline my pattern with my marker. So next, I'll start inserting my measurement. Measure your bust circumference divided by 4. Now I'll pick this dart here. That is what I'll be replacing by the side of my pattern, right? Because I'm cutting this in form of an inbuilt pattern, inbuilt corset, so I don't want to have any excess at the side. I'll mark the under bust circumference divided by 4 and replace the dart. Here my waist is 28. I want to snatch out 2 inches, so I'll do 28 minus 2, which will give me 26. I'll now divide that 26 by 4 and mark. And go ahead to measure my dart intake and I will replace. So if you notice, I'm not adding my sewing allowance to this pattern. I'll be adding it directly on my fabric. Now here I'll mark my hip circumference divided by 4 and measure or replace my dart intake of 2 inches. Go ahead to place my ruler, and I'm going to go ahead to connect, starting from the bust to the under bust to the waist and down to the hip point. Now after marking this, I'll go ahead to outline my pattern. Next, I'll go ahead to mark my bust dart. To get your bust dart is the difference between your shoulder to waist in front and your shoulder to waist at the back. My shoulder to waist in front is 17, while my shoulder to waist at the back is 15.5 inches. Now take out 15.5 from 17 inches. What you're going to have is 1.5. That is how I got my bust dart, and I connected it back to the center of my pattern. Now let's draw out the neckline area of this corset. Now the one we have on the thumbnail, cup bridge started from the chest line, but mine I'll go down by ½ inch. Now your cup bridge is the center. That's ½ inch on both sides of your cup is your cup bridge. So now I'll place my curved rule. I'll connect from the under bust to the bust. So I'm not okay with what I have. I'll go ahead to readjust my cup. So after I'm done readjusting my cup, this is what I have. I'll go ahead to use my marker to outline, and I'll blend out my cup area very well. Now for this part of my cup, I'll be using a free hand to do this because I want to get the neckline that I want. Now I'll just go ahead to connect. After I'm done connecting, I'll use my marker to connect or remark. Now at the side of your cup, there are several methods to get your cup there. So I'll be using this one that is quite easy. Mark your nipple to nipple divided by 2 and add half. But if you're on a bigger size, add 1 inch after your nipple to nipple line. So after I'm done marking, I'll use my free hand to connect from this point to the chest line area and connect also at the yoke. Now after I'm done cutting this, I'm going to go ahead to tighten my yoke a bit, just by 0.3 on both sides. So why I'm doing this is so that the yoke will not come out at the armhole area of my pattern. You notice when you cut out your yoke and you don't tighten it a bit, the yoke tends to pull out by the side of your armhole when you're joining your sleeve. So that is what I'm taking care of. Now this is what it will be looking like, so that at the end, by the side of the yoke will not be going towards the armhole. Now I'll blend out my darts here, and I'll go ahead to draw out my cup. Now we are almost done with this pattern. By the side of this pattern, I'm going to go up by 2 inches. You can either come up by 1.5 to 2 inches, 2.5. I'll blend out the sides and I'll go ahead to connect. So here my pattern is ready, as simple as that. Now after I'm done drawing this out, I'll go ahead to outline the neckline of my pattern, and I'll go in to cut this out. So at this point, if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please kindly hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and if you have any question regarding this pattern, please go ahead to leave your question at the comment section. Now I'll go ahead to cut out my pattern, and while cutting out the cup area, I'll go ahead to blend out my cup. Now after we are done cutting that, we are going over to the back. I'm going to cut this back as a dartless pattern. So I went to mark out all my measurements just like we did for the front. The only difference is that the back neckline is 2.8 by 1.5 inches, and my shoulder to waist at the back is 15.5, and after that I added additional 5 inches just like we did for the front. So for a dartless pattern, all I'll do is mark my bust circumference divided by 4, mark my waist circumference divided by 4, and then go ahead to mark my hip circumference divided by 4. So the waistline I used for the back pattern is that of the new waistline, where I took out 2 inches from my actual waistline. So after that, I'll come up by that same 2 inches, place and connect. So for that waistline, remember my waist is 28 and I took out 2 inches, making it 26. So that 26, if you divide it by 4, that is what my new waistline is. So you should also do that for your pattern. Now I'll mark out the chest line area of this pattern. From here, I'll come down by 2 inches and I'll go in by my nipple to nipple divided by 2, and I will connect. Now from this part of my pattern, I'll go ahead to outline this, and I'm going to come up by 0.3 inches here or 0.5 to tighten the yoke of the back. Come down by 0.5 inches or 0.5 rather, and I'll be marking all this out. This is to tighten the yoke part of this pattern and also for the chest line area not to be popping up at the lacing bar. For the lacing bar, I'm using 2 inches, which I'll place my ruler and draw out a straight line, and I'll mark this to indicate that we have a lacing. So I'm done drafting out the back pattern, and this is what we have. As simple as that, without having much calculation or that to do. So I'm using the dartless pattern technique for the back pattern. Now after cutting out, we are going to cut out the skirt pattern of this dress. You can mark your skirt pattern on a pattern paper or mark it directly on your skirt. Now when you're marking your skirt, you're going to measure from your waist to the full length of your skirt. So I'll be using this pattern paper for my skirt, and I'll add the complete measurements when I'm drafting and when I'm transferring my measurements. So I'll mark my waist, and for my waistline I'll mark 7 inches for my hip point. Let's say if you're a taller person, you should consider using 8 inches for your hip line, sorry. From the waist again, I'll place my tape and I'm going to measure my waist to knee point, and I will mark. You need that because you want to make your skirt a fitted pattern. My own skirt pattern is fitted and not an A-line or mermaid skirt. So I'll mark. From my knee line, I'm going to go ahead to come up by 2 inches. And I will go ahead to draw out a straight line on that part. So this is where my fitted skirt effect is going to start. This is for the skirt to relax very well. I'll mark my waist circumference and I'll add my sewing allowance on the skirt. Mark my hip circumference divided by 4, add my sewing allowance directly on the pattern. Now here I'm going to mark my hip circumference divided by 4 and I'll minus 2 inches from it and mark, then add my sewing allowance. Now whatever measurement I have here, I'll take it all the way to the lower part of this skirt. Now after marking that, I'm going to place my ruler to connect. After I'm done connecting here, I'll go ahead to connect from the hip down to that point and then connect from the hip to the upper part. Then I will go ahead to cut this out. So I'll use this front skirt pattern to trace out that of the back pattern. All you have to do is add a zipper allowance. So when I was cutting this, I added a zipper allowance in front of my skirt. So when I want to cut out the back, I will open it. So for my skirt pattern at the back, you can contour it by going in. So we'll be doing that when we are actually sewing the dress.